Today's video is going to be a little different. Got an entire level playthrough for you of the Scourge of Armagon. Well, a level from the Scourge of Armagon. This is the first official mission pack from Quake. As you guys know, I picked up the Quake Collector's Ultimate Edition, whatever you want to call it, the remastered version on the PlayStation not too long ago. It was announced in celebration of the 25th anniversary of Quake. And it includes everything from the original game, including the first ever mission pack, which was released way back when, March 5th, 1997. That's a long time ago, kids. I don't remember ever playing any of the mission packs for Quake. So, unlike the original game, which I have probably beaten a zillion times, I never got a chance to experience this. And I have to say it holds up really well, but it is an incredibly different experience than that of vanilla Quake. Very, very different for a lot of reasons, which I'm going to highlight here, not only in this particular gameplay video, but just talk through some of my experiences with this first mission pack. First and foremost, I should mention that this mission pack is not actually by Bethesda. This was actually subcontracted out to a different studio altogether. And that name of the studio was Hipnotic Interactive, by the way. It changed names a little bit over time. They did go defunct in 2007. They're most notable for ports. They did this Quake Mission Pack DLC. Then they did a lot of ports. You probably don't remember the game Sin. I do. I enjoyed it. But they ported that over to Linux. And then they also worked on some other ports and some other back-end development work. Probably most notably on Counter-Strike Condition Zero, if you guys remember that. So it wasn't by the original crew who made the original Quake, which I think is important because it definitely has a very different feel to it. First and foremost, I think the thing most people will notice right away is the music is radically different. It's much more upbeat. It's got a faster tone and pace to it, much different than the dark and brooding music that Trent Reznor provided when he was contracted to put together the original Quake soundtrack. Now, I particularly like that soundtrack a lot better than this one. This feels a little too upbeat for me, considering you're going back through the portals of hell and all that sort of stuff. But that's probably the first thing you're going to notice right away. Other big differences, though, include new enemies and new weapons. So the new enemies, which you won't see in this video, you will not see the Centroids. Centroids are basically these giant scorpions that shoot nail guns out of their tails and their arms, and they're very, very crazy. Real quick, by the way, just so you don't think I'm crazy here, this game features a lot of secret levels, and I could have sworn there was a secret level in this lava. I couldn't figure out why they were putting a pentagram of protection so close to a pool of lava, and try as I might, I think I tried 3 or 4 times, I could not seem to find the secret exit here. I'll get into secret exits a little bit later, but just so you don't think I'm crazy and just doing the same thing over and over, I'm legitimately trying to find something here, which unfortunately I fail at. So going back to the enemies, you got the Centroids. Those are featured pretty early on in the game. They're very menacing, particularly because when they show up in the game, you don't have a lot of firepower, so you're taking them out with like a shotgun or a regular nail gun, and they absorb a significant amount of damage, and just like your nail gun, they put out a significant amount of damage. One enemy you will see here quite a bit, and these are the ones I'm actually destroying right now, are known as gremlins. Now, gremlins are annoying as hell because they're these little goblins, and if they get close to you, they actually steal your weapon, which is very, very different. They will actually take your weapon from you entirely to the point that you could potentially not have weapons if there's enough gremlins. Now, when you kill them, thankfully, you do get your weapon back. But in great groups, usually they'll take whatever weapon you have, and depending on your ammo situation, that could spell trouble. They also feed on enemy corpses, which is amazingly horrifying and cool at the same time. Seems to give them back some health. Typically just makes a ton of noise because they go down pretty easily. But you'll hear them chomping, and there's a special animation for them eating enemy corpses, typically of their own kin that get away. Lastly are the spike mines, which are just these giant floating orbs that pretty much one-shot you and explode into 1,000 pieces, and they're incredibly aggravating as well. This expansion also features some new weapons. You're going to get the laser cannon, which shoots these, basically these like bolts of energy that ricochet off walls and surfaces. They're really good in tight corridors. You'll see me actually use a little of it here. They bounce up and down, so you get a couple extra hits, basically. If an enemy's in a tight corridor and you shoot them head on, they basically go perpendicular to the enemy 3 or 4 times in a row. And so they're pretty cool, but they can hurt you, and I have died to my own by shooting into a hallway and then having them bounce back and hit me in the face. So you're going to have to deal with those. You're also going to get the proximity mine launcher, which I'm not a big fan of. Basically, it is a modified grenade launcher. The only thing that it does differently is it attaches to a surface, and you basically lay it as traps, which honestly probably wouldn't be such a bad thing because this game is very trolly, and I feel like if you were smart about where to set those things at, you may be able to set some really good traps. Lastly, you're going to get Mjolnir. That's right. You're going to get the legendary hammer of Thor himself, which is a giant hammer that when you swing shoots lasers and lightning everywhere and pretty much clears a room, but it uses an excessive amount of your lightning ammo, your bolt ammo. So I don't use it too often, but it's cool to play with. Additionally, they also added some new power-ups. Now, I just used one incorrectly a second ago. That was the Horn of Conjuring. What the Horn of Conjuring does is it summons a random enemy to protect you. Now, I instantly kill it because I don't know any different. I just want to murder things. But it will follow you around and kind of work on your behalf. They're not that great. It sounds cool. In a large room, I think the best thing it can do is serve as a distraction, but typically your weapons do pretty juicy explosive damage, so it's not going to last very long. It's an interesting concept, but really kind of hamstrung by the AI at the time. I don't feel like it's as good as it could have been. Next, you're going to get the Empathy Shield, which is something that gives you basically half damage. So it's not as good as the Pentagram of Protection, which is full immunity. It's half immunity, but hey, something better than nothing. They've also added a Wetsuit, which basically makes you invulnerable to electricity, which is really important in some of these later levels. It also gives you a little bit more oxygen, so you could stay underwater a bit longer. I gotta say, considering there's 14 levels, which there are 3 additional secret levels, which just like in the original Quake have to be found by exiting out of different areas or doing different things to leave. It's a pretty meaty DLC. It's going to give you a lot to sink your teeth into, and you're going to spend a lot of time playing through it for sure. The levels are long and very, very confusing. I thought of this as I was playing this game. You know, we always talk about like Metroidvania games where it's backtracking. I feel like this was the first Metroidvania game. Now, it doesn't typically include items like keys or anything, but typically there's switches, levers, enemies you need to kill, trigger points you need to activate that are basically going to open up various doors and portals and areas for you to walk through. So there is a lot of backtracking. It's not uncommon to do that. And that's why in this particular level, I was lost here at the beginning. I was very confused where to go because I didn't understand what I was missing. And as you'll see in a second, there's actually a invisible pressure plate inside behind this Horn of Conjuring that when I step on it, I already picked up the horn, it will actually activate an area where 4 enemies will appear. And then as soon as I killed one of the enemies, I realized, oh, this is the right way. So there is a lot of map mechanics done here. Switches, levers, hidden elevators, pressure plates, dropping floors, spike traps, laser traps, switches you have to toggle on and off which emit electricity or fire or different environmental hazards. They really pushed this engine in a very different way than the original Quake, and I think the game is really a lot of fun for it, actually. It's a very different experience because it's not just that run and basically shotgun mechanic that you really experienced in the original Quake. It's much, much slower, more methodical. But like I said, it is a little bit more trolly. I think that is the big problem here. Is a lot of times you're going to flip a switch and 15 enemies are going to spawn around you. Some of the hardest enemies in the game. You are constantly going to be scavenging, picking, pulling every little bullet and every little weapon you can, every health pack. You're going to be looping back numerous times for health and armor if you're lucky enough to get it laying around, because ammo is so scarce in this game, and it does really struggle. You'll see I do a lot of safety saves because I don't want to replay this again if I don't have to. It was fun, but it does get frustrating because you know what you need to do. It's just there are so many enemies that are in your way. And here's a perfect example. Just, you know, we could have just had 1 or 2 zombies, but no, let's have like 15 of them that are not only here, but then loop around the corner of the map. And then we're going to spawn in some floating enemies so that your rockets don't always necessarily hit those guys too. And it's just groups and groups of enemies at once. It is not uncommon for these levels to contain upwards of 100 enemies per map, which compared to the original Quake is excessive. Yes, like I said, you do get some of those new weapons and some of those new skills, which help a little bit, but the placement of some of these enemies is brutal. They're in some horrible places. Although the enemy pathing is probably your best bet to manipulate the heck out of the enemy pathing, because they are kind of dumb at times. Just expect enemies to be in the worst possible places. You'll see I'm very meticulously checking corners. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing Rainbow Six Siege here, making sure there's no enemy peeking around. They're also in weird angles, weird environmental things, so weapons don't always hit them correctly, like these caskets, which it's kind of require a little bit of a trick shot there. But I think what all of this ultimately leads to, and why I highly recommend this particular expansion, is a much more focus on exploration. I feel you are going to be rewarded if you take your time and don't rush through these maps. Enjoy the experience. Enjoy all of this content, because it was done with a lot of care. And I think when you slowly walk around and find these secret elevators and doors and stuff, yeah, you're going to get a secret, but it's going to set you up for success in such a good way that really does make the exploration feel much more rewarding than I think in other Quakes. And I'm not just talking about like finding quad damage before the final boss or pentagram of protection, but you'll just see that I'm constantly gripping at like finding the right types of armor and weapons and how much backtracking I'm doing and really checking my corners. And it's so nice and refreshing when you can walk around and have a little bit more. Here you're going to get Mjolnir for the first time. You're going to get to check that out. I don't even know. That item there I was not able to find. I could not figure out how to get there. It was a secret that I unfortunately missed. But here's Mjolnir. Look at that. Blows all these gremlins away. It's incredibly powerful. Lots of lightning damage. Look at that. Just blasted him right in the face and blew him across the wall, through the wall. Why not? It's Mjolnir. So that was a lot of fun. The other cool thing that this expansion does, I didn't touch on it, but I will. It takes and really expands the lore of Quake. And a lot of people probably don't care about that. I would say that the story, and I'm putting air quotes around here, is definitely very secondary to a lot of what Quake is known for. Quake is known for the Gibbs, it's known for the rocket launcher, and obviously the music, which is different here, but I'm talking the original experience. And these horrifying enemies and stuff like that. The story never really matters. You're going into these weird worlds to blow up guys, collect runes to kill the big bad because the game said so. But I feel like in this expansion, we get a lot more story, and it really shows in the level design. So here you're actually taking out one of the Quake generals, this guy named Armagon, which, I mean, that's the name of the expansion, Scourge of Armagon. Or Armagon, I don't know what they were looking for there, but It follows him, and oh, I wouldn't say him. It's a giant monster, of course, but it's a general that is basically staging an invasion via this portal, very similar to the first one. But it really adds on that. The first whole like 5 or 6 levels, that whole section is on Earth. So you're not fighting crazy demons. You're just walking around fighting grunts and other soldiers. You don't have a lot of crazy weaponry at that point. You're just basically with like a shotgun. I think you get a nail gun towards the very end, but nothing crazy. No Mjolnir or any kind of crazy armor. It's just, it's grounded in reality, if that is such a thing in Quake. But, you know, the basic finding the key cards, exploring, working your way through this cave system. And it isn't until a short way through when you actually unlock this rift that the second phase of the game starts, where you actually enter hell and start fighting through there and working your way through this level. And it isn't, you know, the story actually follows a really logical flow, and it's cool because the levels get progressively more menacing, your arsenal becomes stronger, and I feel like that was really something that the original Quake was lacking. It definitely had a lack of that, I don't want to say a sense of urgency, but definitely changed, I think. This expansion definitely changed my feelings on that, and I really appreciate it for that. And I know I pick a lot of times on, like, the story doesn't matter if the gameplay is good, but in a case like this, you have both, and it's great, and I love it for that. So I feel like you get a much better sense of character, I won't say progression, I mean, it's not really a whole lot different, but you can kind of like sense where the story's going in the sense of like, okay, you're still only getting bite-sized pieces of story at the end in the text block as you move on from area to area, but the level design tells a very different story of what's going on here. And being in this catacomb area, here's my first spike ball that blows me away. Spike mine, it's so annoying. God, it's like, it's just a bullet sponge, and it just blows up right in your face, and it's so stupid. But yeah, so I really appreciated that, and I thought that was actually a really, really cool touch here, and I liked it. I thought it was fun. You're going to struggle with this, though. As you've seen, I've died quite a few times, and I consider myself a pretty good player. You're going to struggle a lot. This is not easy, and I'm playing on just like the normal difficulty. I can only imagine if you ramp this up, how much harder this game would become. It's definitely hard, not just because of the sheer amount of enemies they throw at you, which will absolutely deplete your arsenal. You will finish every level with just a small amount of weaponry, very low amount of HP, very low amount of armor, and you're going to start every level basically, I don't want to say from scratch, but you're going to be weak. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the sheer amount of enemies, but I think it also has to do with the placement of those enemies. So here we go again, round 2. I mean, look at this. I mean, you're just, I don't know, it's hard. I do actually beat this, though, believe it or not. We're getting close to the end here. But yeah, with basically the sheer amount of enemies and the placement of them is what's really going to hurt you. Enemies in places that are hard to get to, where splash damage isn't really getting, is it really kind of taken away, where enemies jump up on you in super close quarters, where you're low on ammo, turning the corner, going up a staircase, and there's a guy shooting up over your head behind you, whatever it happens to be. I think it's really going to require a lot more meticulous gameplay, and for that I appreciated it. So I recommend this a lot. I think that Quake is, I'll be $10 for all this, okay, on the PlayStation Store. It's definitely worth more than that. Quake is such an iconic game. I think you're starting to see some of this level design and how much it really influenced maybe some of your other favorite shooters that exist out there. I think this guy kills me. I'm pretty sure this guy kills me. You're going to see some... Oh, no. I think the prox mine kills me. My own prox mine. Yeah. I think I do this like 2 more times because I'm such an idiot. That's the other reason I hate the prox mine, by the way. You can't really see it underwater. So you're shooting these stupid... I don't know why I don't just use grenade launchers, but use this stupid prox mine and you can't see anything. You get dumped. It's so stupid. Yeah, see, there is me with the prox mine again. Okay, it's clear. Let me just go ahead and run across and... dumb. What I was starting to say as I wrap up this video here is I really think you start to see a great appreciation for some of your other favorite levels. And the fact that they were able to take this old engine, which was dated, and really, really put it on its head. Really kind of squeak out every little piece of it. It's so interesting just from a case study to look at the original Quake versus this, look at all the new weapons, look at all the new level mechanics, whether it be the pressure plates or the AI working for you, even though it doesn't work that great, or some of the character design or the progression that you have through the way the story is told via the levels. And I think it pushes the envelope in the right direction everywhere. They don't make DLC like this anymore, and it's incredibly frustrating to think that something like this was the gold standard years ago, but it's not now. With that, I am beaming out of here because the coffin is your exit, and that's my cue to leave. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.